Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor. I'm really pleased to have Daniel McAdams with me again, Executive Director of Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. And because our foreign policy is so much opposed, I believe, in my view at least, to the Constitution of the United States, and because I believe our warmongering overseas is playing a major role in the economic destruction of our country, not to mention the destruction of our freedom and liberties at home, I want to have Daniel and or other members of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity on our show on a regular basis. Daniel's a regular member. If you would like to know more about him, you can read his bio at the Voice America website. We only have a few minutes with Daniel today, and he's actually talking to us from Hawaii today. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Jay. It's great to be with you.
Great to have you again. I know that that this whole thing about Syria seems to me that we are really hell-bent on going to war. Today's headline in the Financial Times, London's Financial Times, reads, Kerry says Assad used chemicals is undeniable. So what is the evidence that you know of that is saying this is undeniable, that Assad is behind this chemical?
Well, Kerry's performance is even more despicable than the unfortunate performance of Colin Powell back in the run-up to the Iraq War. At least Colin Powell was lied to and was given some bogus information to present to the U.S. people. Kerry hasn't even done that. Kerry just said, look, we decided that they used it. We know that they did. We'll show you some evidence at some point, but we're going in. So they haven't even bothered with the dog and pony show to try to convince us, at least to this point. Perhaps they will if they get some pushback. But it just shows how much further we've gone downhill, even from 2003.
You think that their read of the American public is they don't care?
They don't care, but more than that, Jay, they're ill-informed. Look at the mainstream media. I was just glancing at things this morning. The Wall Street Journal, Syria defiant as U.S. prepares attack. I mean, that's exactly the same wording they use with Iraq. What does the word defiant mean? Defiant. It's defiant when you say, don't attack us. We haven't done this.
Yeah, I mean, why would you say, oh, please attack me? I'd like that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So they're using the same words. The general public is not getting the full story at all. They're only hearing Kerry and the warmongers in Congress on both sides who have been pushing for this for a long time, and now they believe they have their pretext, and that frames the issue. And people like you and Pat Buchanan and others who are saying this is a bad idea, they're consigned, unfortunately, to smaller venues,
Well, let's go back to the Iraqi war. Did we ever have any evidence there were weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons used there?
No, it was all cooked up. If you remember, there was this fellow called Curveball who was an Iraqi alcoholic who cooked up a bunch of lies and sold them to the U.S., there were several others. Look at Ahmed Chalabi, who after he participated in lying us into war, said, "Well, I was a hero in error. I did the right thing to get the overthrow, but I was wrong about the other stuff. Sorry."
Yeah. The general theme that we get from the mainstream media is that we should all be good, patriotic Americans and get behind Obama and our military-industrial complex. And, the Times said, Secretary Kerry said that President Obama will make an, quote, informed decision about the U.S. response, what he calls a moral obscenity. Yeah. And Kerry said nothing is more serious. Nothing is receiving more serious scrutiny. But then on the other hand, Vladimir Putin said there is no evidence that the Syrian regime had been guilty of a chemical weapons attack. So, well, what evidence is there, Daniel? I mean, in fact, I'm hearing some ideas from the other side that, in fact, it's the people that we're supporting that may have. And interestingly enough, there was supposed to be a United Nations team of inspectors that was supposed to be able to go in there and determine the truth, but they were fired at and weren't allowed to get in and see the people that died. So.
Yeah, I think they made their way back in there. What's interesting about this UN team, if we back up a little bit, the whole genesis of this this latest push to war is really interesting. So, we're supposed to believe, the UN inspectors team arrived within 72 hours of this attack, which was on the 21st of August, right? Mm-hmm. They arrived a couple of days before at the invitation of the Syrian government to examine a couple of other previous sites of alleged chemical attacks. So Assad let them in and said, have a look at these sites and assess them. So within a couple of days of them arriving, we're supposed to believe that Assad is going to fire a chemical weapon in their direction, killing a couple of hundred people, this is something that he's going to fire at the UN inspectors. It's just so bizarre,
stupid,
and idiotic to expect us to believe this. And as far as the righteousness and moral indignity of carry on this, indignation of carry on this, look, how long has the U.S. been supporting the Egyptian military that just a couple of weeks ago killed several thousand civilians protesting in the street? It doesn't seem to bother them, but a supposed couple of hundred people killed by something that even seasoned chemical weapons experts say it just does not carry the signature of sarin gas. First of all, the doctors are treating these people without any protective gear on. These doctors would all be dead if it were these kinds of weapons they're saying. So it just doesn't add up to the experts. But essentially the administration is saying, don't bother us with all this. We're convinced, we know it is, and we're going in.
Sounds an awful lot like.
And my prediction is that they'll be in by Thursday. They're going to call back Congress, which is their enabler. They'll get some sort of an authorization. It'll be wrapped in beautiful language about peace and democracy, but it'll have a couple of magic words in it that will serve as an authorization for the president to use force. And then you'll see a couple of days of Tomahawk missiles going in. And the irony, Jay, is supposedly as a retaliation for 100 to 300 people who were supposedly killed by this weapon, the U.S. will probably kill tens of thousands with Tomahawk missiles. These are 1,000-pound bombs. These are not little surgical strikes. These are 1,000-pound bombs that are going to strike Syria. They're going to kill many, many people just by exploding. And B, what about all the chemicals that are going to be dispersed by the so-called, by the Tomahawk's mission of blowing up Assad's chemical weapons stockpiles?
Yeah.
We're supposed to believe that these will all be magically incinerated and not a single speck will be dispersed among the population. So we're facing the possibility of killing tens of thousands of people to supposedly punish Assad for killing a couple of hundred. It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
And this is all for the sake of democracy, but we showed how much we respect democracy in Egypt, haven't we?
Sure, and in other places as well. Democracy is what we say it is.
Our kind of democracy, as Hillary Clinton said recently. We want our kind of democracy.
Going to take over in Syria once Assad is overthrown. We've seen the kinds of lunatic jihadists who are blowing up churches, attacking minorities, attacking Christians, forcing women to wear veils. These are the people that will take over.
Yeah.
Not to say Assad is the kind of guy that is an ideal leader, but look what follows him.
Daniel, I was reading here a Reuters report today. A Syrian Kurdish leader says Assad is not to blame for the chemical weapons attack. He says Assad would not be so stupid as to use chemical weapons close to Damascus. So this is sort of what you were saying as well. I don't know if you've seen that report or not.
I've seen several other reports that say he wouldn't use it. He's not shown himself to be so foolhardy throughout the entire war. He's actually been militarily quite clever in fighting a very, very difficult insurgency that's supported from without, supported by foreign sponsors with a seemingly unlimited supply of money and weapons and fighters. So he's not done anything so foolhardy before. And also, Jay, the stakes are so low. He's fighting 25,000, 30,000 insurgents, jihadists, and he's going to trouble himself to kill 300 women and children.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Why? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, we lied our way into one war in Iraq, and it looks like we're getting ready to do it again. And American people, if they don't, hey, look, and you talk about tens of thousands of people that are killed in Iraq, and there are going to be lots of deaths here too. But, it reminds me so much of what I was reading in Peikoff's book about how the Germans killed the Jews, and they had dancing girls and flower gardens atop the ovens. To me, we're keeping this all sterile. We don't have it in our television. It's not like Vietnam where we saw some awful things on our television screens. These days, we're not seeing anything. And it seems to me as if the American people, out of sight, out of mind. It's not no big deal, and besides, there are people that are different than us why should we care?
Sure. We saw that in Libya. As soon as the liberation was completed, the cameras went off, and nobody saw the tens of thousands that were murdered.
Yeah.
Well, enormous amount of black-skinned Libyans who are our allies massacred because of their dark skin.
Yeah. We just have another minute or so to go here, but I see there was another report that I read. Chris Harmer, a senior naval analyst at the Institute for Study of War, said, and I quote, "Any ship officer can launch 30 or 40 Tomahawk missiles. It is not difficult. The difficulty is explaining to strategic planners how this advances the U.S. interest," end of quote. So how will this advance the U.S. interest?
Well, it depends on, I think you and I, Jay, and people like Ron Paul have a different view of what the U.S. interest is than the warmongers in Washington, and also the weapons manufacturers, and those are the people, ironically, who fund the Institute for the Study of War. If you look at the site, they're all funded by arms manufacturers. So even though that doesn't sound like a bad quote, they're always pushing for war. So they have a different view of America's best interest. You and I believe our best interest is in being friends and doing business with the people overseas rather than blowing them up.
Well, I think we're in the minority, and I guess maybe this continued warmongering and aggression overseas will continue until it can't any longer, until financially we're not able to carry it on, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, one part of me says buy the defense stocks, because these things are just, there's not going to be any end to the revenues coming in until this system breaks down, perhaps. But the other part of me that was brought up as a Mennonite and as a person who was brought up as a conscientious objector, it's difficult for me to think that way, to think in terms of profiting from this. But clearly there is a huge military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about that seems to me, is sort of his worst nightmare in a way, that seems to be taking over.
Yes, I wouldn't go along with military stocks, with defense stocks. I can't do it conscientiously. I have a difficult time doing that. But in any event, in a way, all of us are part of the system. We pay our taxes. We are, as long as we vote for people that keep us at war, we are all part of the same system, I guess. Well, anyway, that's all the time we have, Daniel. I look forward to talking to you next week, and we do have to go to a commercial break. Thanks again for being with us. Thanks, Jay. Bye-bye.